Okay, so now we talked about subquery, but it's non-correlated subquery. This time it's a little bit more complex one. A correlated subquery. Correlated means, as I give you a note here, there is two select statements again, but this time inner query must be processed over again for each row in the outer query. So you will see what this means shortly. So to better understand this, again, we are going to start with an example. So let's read the question. Find the product where the quantity on hand is greater than the average quantity on hand of all the products for that vendor. Each product, we will see one matching vendor because one vendor is providing that product. But this same vendor may provide not just one product but multiple products. So we want to get the average of all those products for the given vendor, and we want to compare this average with the current product quantity on hand. Sounds a little bit complex. So for this, instead of looking at real data, this time I want to use a little bit simplified version of the data. So let's see. Okay, so suppose we have two tables, vendor and product. And let me just draw here vendor table and product table. So here vendor, and here we have a product table. And for this vendor table, I want to make it a little bit simpler version. So instead of list of all the columns, I will just see two columns. First one is vendor code. Second column is, let's say, vendor name. And we will consider only two vendors. So let's say the first vendor is V1, second vendor is V2. And the vendor name is, let's say, X, and the second vendor is Y. Now, in terms of product, although we have 16 products, I'm going to consider how about only 4 products. So suppose there is a product table, and 1 and 2, 3, 4 products, and not all the columns. Let's just focus on what we are interested in. So first, let's say this is a P code, product code, and the second column is, let's say this is a P quantity on hand that we are looking for, and the last one is this P code, the vendor's V code is matched with the foreign key. So let me write down V code foreign key. So we know that V code here, that is a foreign key, and that's matched with the primary key. Anyway, as a kind of a simple sample data, let me write down product code P1, P2, P3, and P4. Let's suppose we have quantity on hand that is about 2, 3, about 4, and 5. And the vendor providing this product, I will just assume that first product, we have vendor 1. Second product, about vendor 2. And the third product, same vendor V1 is providing. Fourth product, vendor 2 is providing. So 2 vendors are providing 2 products each. So now, what we need to do, we want to find a product whose quantity on hand is greater than the average of all the products quantity on hand for the given same vendor. So what does that mean is, here when we read the product, let's say outside we are reading each product. So we are checking each product. So currently I'm looking at the first product. Now when I look at first product, I'm interested in this quantity on hand, whether it's greater than the average. But the average of this given product, vendor V1, this V1 may provide not just one product, but many products. So we want to search all the products provided by this given vendor V1, and we want to get the average of quantity on hand. So therefore, outside we are looking at this one product. But since vendor is given as a V1, we have to read the same table, product table, one more time from the beginning to the end. And if there is any other product provided by same vendor V1, we need to get the average for all those products. So let's check it. The first one, yes, definitely is V1. Second one, V2, no. So third one is the same vendor, so V1, so we need to use it. Fourth one, it's not the same vendor. So now to get the average, what we have to do is we have to use not only just this number, the other numbers. Using these two numbers together, we need to get the average. So what is the average is 2 plus 4 over 2. It's actually 3. Note that that is for vendor 1. So when we have one product outside, and this product has one vendor, so for this given one vendor, we get the average 3. Now we can compare this current product's quantity on hand 2 with this average value. So when you compare 2 and 3, is it true? No, it's false. So actually outside here, when you look at the first product, we will not show this product 1. Now, we will move down. So currently now it's product 2. So again, for product 2, let's focus on this second row. And we have to compare which value this quantity on hand. But now the vendor is different, V2. So what we need to do? Again, here we have to read the product table one more time. This time we are looking for vendor 2. So let me highlight this time. So V1 is not vendor 2. Here P2 we have vendor 2. And the P3 V1, so we do not include it. And the P4 we have to include it. Again, this time actually we have two products, 3 and 5. These are quantity that we need to get the average. So how can we get the average here? Again, using these two numbers 5 and 3, let's get the average. 3 plus 5 over 2, that is 4. This is what? Average quantity on hand when vendor is given as V2. So for the second product, note that this number means this number 3 must be compared with not this average, but we have to use this new average 4 since vendor is 2. And we have to compare, is it true? No, it's false. So we are going to skip this product as well. Currently, we are looking at the second product and we may not show this product. Similarly, the third one, now we move down with this product 3, check the vendor V1. So again, with this V1, we have to go through this product table one more time. Since it's a V1, what is the average? We will get this average on top 3. So this number 4 would be compared with average 3 for V1. So it is greater than 3. So we are going to show this product. So P3 is chosen. Lastly, the last product outside. Here's a P4. Again, now vendor is changed to V2. So again, what would be the number compared with this 5? We have to read this product table from the beginning to the end, and we will get the average. This time, this is the average that we have to use. So for that number, last one, 5 is compared with 4. Is it greater than 4? True. So we are going to show this P4 as well. So as a result, we have these two products, P3 and P4, where the quantity on hand is greater than the average of all the products quantity on hand provided by that vendor, the same vendor. So now you may understand what you need to look, you have to find. So given this, we are going to make SQL statements, but remember here outside, again here outside, we are looking at each product. When we look at each product, vendor is keep changing. And given different vendors, we have to get the average, but this average need to be recalculated because vendor would be different. In real data product table, we are going to evaluate each product. So we will read the products here. When you read one row, for example, the first product, I want to compare this quantity on hand 8 with the average value. But the average value, to get it, you have to look at this vendor code 25595, and you need to get the average of all the products quantity on hand provided by the same vendor. So you have to read one more time all the product table, whether there is any product provided by this 25595. Actually, there is 1 and 2 and 3 products provided by the same vendor. So if I want to demonstrate this process, suppose we want to show P, how about this script, and the P quantity on hand that we are interested in. And how about we code from product table where the condition is current products quantity on hand must be greater than the average value. But here, how can you get the average value? That's the question. The average value you are looking for is, suppose if it's the first product, we know that this vendor code is 25595. So to get that average, you can say we are going to read one more time the product table. And first, let's say I want to list only quantity on hand. And if I know that the vendor code is given, let me say vendor code is given and matched with the first product. What's the first product? 25595. Let me show you one more time. So 25595. I can list all the products quantity on hand. So here 2555595. Let's see whether we have 3 products. Here we have 3 products quantity on hand. And how can you get the average? You can simply apply the aggregate function avg, go to SQL and execute one more time. There's 126667. So as a result of this, we got these numbers. So initial select statements, actually, if that is the first product, you can use this. However, that's only for the first product, and it is keep changing because here in original product table, second product, we have a different vendor code, so you need to recalculate this average. So this number, average, is keep changing. Why? Because this vendor code is keep changing. So what you need to do is, here, let me just replace this question mark here inside the parenthesis. And similar to what we have done before, can we just put this inside this parenthesis? But it's not easy like that, because this inside the select statements, we are not get just one average value, but by changing this question mark, the V code, we have to recalculate the average for each product when you read outside. In other words, this question mark, this different vendor code must be provided by this current product you are reading outside. So you need to get average based on the information you receive from outside the product. So how can we replace this question mark by indicating outside the product's current vendor code? A bit more challenging part here is we are using the same product table 2 times, one outside and the other inside. And when we use a product table outside, we are reading each product sequentially. But here inside, if outside the product, current products provide one specific vendor code, we want to read all the products one more time inside, and we want to get the average for that specific vendors. The problem is, since we are using the same table, we cannot distinguish them. I mean, machine cannot distinguish them. In this case,
Actually, it's a very interesting approach. We can use alias. We use alias in this list of columns previously, but we can use alias to distinguish the same physical table in different ways. So here, the first table, simply I will call this as P1. And many times, since alias can be used without as, particularly for table alias, many people do not use as. So let me just use one space and I will call it as P1. So from now on, we will just call this outside product table as P1. And the inside one, similarly, after space, I will call this as P2. Then now, here in this where statements, what we are going to do is I want to get outside P1 current products V code. So as you read each product outside, the product will be changing, and this product's vendor code will be passed inside. And if this vendor code is given here, inside P2, so for here, let me say P2, vendor code will be assigned from outside the product. So again, here outside, we are reading each product, and when we look at one specific row, that product's P1's vendor code will be entered inside here. And using this as a one specific vendor code, we are going to read the product one more time as a P2, and we can get the average of all those products provided by that vendors. So if you execute it, now this is the result. So only those products quantity on hand is greater than all the products provided by that vendors on the right side. Okay, so the key is here, we need to use two selected statements, but both of them are correlated. Correlated means outside information is used inside, and by changing outside information, the inside selected statements is not executed just once for one value, but it is executed multiple times to get different values, in this case, different average quantity on hand. Okay, now in your note, actually, it's a little bit different because we want to show PDscript, quantity on hand, vendor code. Instead of vendor code, we want to show vendor names. So in that case, I want to add a vendor name as an example here. Then vendor name, it's not in the product table, so we actually need to add one more table here. So let's say we want to use a vendor table. But if you use a vendor table together, you should use not only this quantity on hand condition. Let me move down here. We need to add join conditions. So first, let's say vendors V code is matched with this product's vendor code. So let's say P1's vendor code. We use the alias P1, right? And then this condition is combined with the second condition here using subquery. But note that if you add this vendor table and if you want to keep this vendor code, you need to qualify so vendors V code. And if you execute it, this is the result. Just one more thing to be consistent with your note. Let me just copy this one more time. Since we are using vendor and product in outside selected statements, note that we are using vendor here, and we add join condition vendors V code and the products outside products vendor code same here. So suppose instead of P1's V code, can we replace it with vendors? That's fine. Then some advantage we can get here is previously we use alias P1 and P2 because P1, P2 both are product, so we cannot distinguish them. But now if you use vendor here, this vendor qualifier, since inside we do not have vendor table, definitely this is referencing outside the vendors, and the vendor code outside will be passed here. If you decide to do that, actually you don't have to worry about alias, because inside outside product table it can be easily distinguished, and here you do not mix two product tables. So instead of using alias, if you just put V code first inside here, this V code is referencing just inside product table, and this vendor's V code will be passed from outside. And further, outside I don't need to use this alias, and here we can just say product V code, and this product table is referencing this outside product. That's why in your note we do not have alias. Instead, we use vendor as a qualifier that will be used to reference outside vendor tables. So let's test it. So you will get the same result in this case. Again, as a concluding remark, there are two different types of subquery. One is non-correlated, and the other one is correlated. And for the correlated subquery, carefully relate outside select and inside select. Sometimes if needed, for example, if we use the same tables both outside and inside, you may want to think about alias. But sometimes you can apply some tricks like that using the table outside table vendor. You can combine this outside table with the inside without using alias.